Yo, what's up, guys? We got Spencer in the building. He's a really talented artist and great friend of mine. He's been doing music, I don't know, like 10 plus, 13 plus years or whatever.
Mhm.
And he's about to run through one of his projects he showed me. Um, I don't know the name. I guess it's an ID or whatever.
Yeah, it's just an ID. The running title was as a meme, Leonardo, because
Hmm.
like it's kind of like Zan Griffin's Leo. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna make like a meme name, you know?
Yeah,
But yeah,
we got it.
okay. So we'll just go with the intro here, and then we'll just kind of go to the first drop just to give you an idea of what we're working with, and I'll just break down step by step. So let's start it off with the intro here. So that was just like an overall run through of the track. The inspiration here was a lot of Zan Griffin's work, primarily because I loved like the grandeur and like the size of his tracks. I love how it was cinematic up until the drop, and the drop just hit so egregiously hard. It felt like a punch in the face every time that you like listen to it, but in the best way, right? Because it was like so shockingly contrasting to what like led up to it, and that's like the goal that I was aiming for here. So I'll break it down through each element. So you have this like I believe this is an E piano. Yeah, it's like a electronic stage piano. It's like this. But I ran it through, if I'm not mistaken, just reverb and a little bit of like a low cut, where pretty much the reverb's set at 100%. So without it, it actually sounds like this.
Spencer's going crazy, like it's like full screen, and then of the piano, and then
Oh yeah. It does that with
oh,
that plugin. FL
okay.
Studio doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. But yeah. So this is the reverb that I ran on it. Thank you for reminding me that. I'll just make a mental note. But yeah. So this is what it sounds like without it, right?
Beautiful.
And it's like that's really nice. But then once you add that, even for just for like a second duration, but mix 100 with like full depth and high cut on your like Valhalla room, you just get it's like kind of like a pad, but it's more controlled because you don't have like a lot of bleed in between the notes. So when you play it, it sounds like this. And it just sounds like it just fills the space without being messy. It's pretty clean. The notes are really, really nice.
That's really
The overall
interesting.
progression is actually very, very interesting. When you look at it, you're just like, holy shit, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Um, but funnily enough, I didn't even write it in this key originally. I wrote it up here, right? But then I brought it down a few semitones just to get that lower vibe, that kind of more like
Hmm.
what's the word, triumphant kind of feeling, because like it really feels like it's climbing
Mm-hmm.
because of the range that the notes are hitting with this chord
Mm-hmm.
progression, which is really nice. And to contrast with that, I was like, well, we need something that's just kind of like moving the chords, and it doesn't have to be something like the chords, just something that's like a small ambient lead. So this, it's like a little like kind of bell, same thing, just like a lot of reverb, but not too heavy on the duration. Just like a small little lead that kind of carries this, so that way it doesn't feel so empty. As well
Mm-hmm.
as you don't need to add any other elements. You don't need to add like a bass. You don't need to add another like instrument like a piano or something until later on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that bell, actually, I think it's a serum.
Without the bell,
Yeah.
I would think it would be kind of not
Oh,
as
it's dry,
interesting.
dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly. That's
dry.
something. Yeah.
It's dry as hell. It's like,
I don't know why my screen went black. Not too sure what happened.
oh, hold on,
Oh, there you
serum.
go. There you
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's the shitty thing about this, man. FL doesn't know what to do with this,
go.
but this is what it sounds like without the lead.
Ah, yeah. Really, just
It's
kind
not.
of
It sounds cool, but it's not interesting. You
right.
know, it's like
Exactly.
it's very dry. And then we have a down here. We have this pad from an Ethan Rash pack,
Oh
which
yeah.
is a pretty. Yeah, he's a pretty good producer. I just have it, volume automated to like go up with the swell and then slowly go back down, but it's still playing throughout the whole time. Up until the drops. So I use it only in like the intro, the build, the breakdown, and the outro, because the rest of it didn't really need that extra ambience. I filled the
Mm-hmm.
space up with all the elements pretty well, and the
Mm-hmm.
rest of it. And then we look at like this, the the token virtual riot sample in
Mm-hmm.
almost every song, the clock ticking, just
Mm-hmm.
to give it a little bit more progression. That's a little off time of the melody, in terms of like you kind of feel like this back and forth motion with everything. So when it comes together, it just sounds really nice. Also these two Ethan Rash, like, ambient like birds and like
That's
just
what it
kind of
was.
like foresty sounds. It sounds really nice because it kind of gives you like a setting,
Yeah. Yeah.
like it makes it a little bit more human, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of videos that I've seen, the artist always perpetuates like when you're using like a piano or something, you should humanize the velocities, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's true in almost every case, but I actually did the opposite in this song.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is I wanted that impact. I wanted that like feeling
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
building, and so I actually get to that right now. Second part, we introduced three new elements, technically four, but we'll talk about that. So we add this bell. That's just kind of like carrying along. Again, it's contrasting with this, but meeting the timing of the TikTok loop.
It's
So it's
sick how
just it
you.
sounds
Oh,
nice.
sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you good? You good?
It's sick how you like because I think you're doing the 1 7 5 1 for that
Yeah.
ARP, and then
Mm-hmm.
the last 4 bars you change it up, which I really like that because it like
Yeah.
gives it variation and shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Variations for melodies and arps are like my shit. Like I love writing something and like I'll get like a rhythm, right? Like for instance, if we like use this arp right here, like we have the I'm too high up, so
Ooh, that's nice. Nice, dude.
right,
Yeah,
like just
that's sick.
creating something. Yeah, it's sick to be able to do that
Yeah.
because it adds like that, unexpected flow, because you'll hear in a lot of songs, specifically recently, people just do like they just do this, and then maybe they'll add one note on the
Mm-hmm.
fourth bar. But it's like that's not interesting to me. That's just
Mm-hmm.
like it's very dry and it doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
give the track personality. So I
Mm-hmm.
like giving it that little tonality of like bringing it
Mm-hmm.
up, bringing it down, and then at the last second changing it so you don't expect what's going to happen. But then the second time around that you hear it, you know it's coming. So it's like you're anticipating it. It kind of creates that like artificial sense of tension, which is
Exactly.
what you really need in
Yeah.
songs. Like
Absolutely.
tension and release is the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not just like adding layers and like creating these builds. It's exactly what you do with the notes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we have this right here, which is, your typical plucks, right?
Nice, dude.
Right, it's just like, okay, cool. I don't even know why they're in eighth note. I'm pretty sure I just LFO'd them in the yeah, inside it. I don't even need them to be eighth. They could
Oh
just
yeah.
run, but eh. I think I originally ran with them as eighth notes, and I was like, maybe 16ths would be better, but I didn't like the sound. So rather than that, I got lazy and I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe
Gotcha.
I added a Reese. Oh, not a Reese. It's just actually it's an analog bass. It's I believe it's a what ample? Yeah,
Oh,
ample
nice.
bass P. It's a free bass guitar that you can get online. That's just super clean. It adds like
Nice.
that kind of organic texture. So when everything hits it, oh, hold on. Let me fix that real quick. There we go.
I just
Okay.
thought of a meme real quick where like if that happens on my
The,
video, I just
yeah, the CPU just dies.
yeah.
When that hits, it just sounds like
Alright.
this. It's like turn it up a bit since now we're not running it through Ozone,
Yeah.
which that will make the drop sound a little bit different in terms of the overall processing. But that's so I have this like percussion loop, which is literally just Zan Griffin's Leo percussion loop. It's just these. All right, and
Nice.
that sounds great and like adds a lot of impact and flow. But I mean like you can't really get anywhere with just that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
also add this ultrasonic loop too that is in a different timing and different pacing to kind of back and forth between the two.
Nice.
Right, and then we listen to them together. It's like
Oh yeah. Nice. Nice.
it just that's such a natural way to like build up instruments, and then they just work perfectly with just some like just some kicks just going just
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right, and they slowly come up, right,
Nice. Yep.
and then it goes in, right. And I use a different kick too for this one. I actually use the one that I use in the drop for this one because
Mm.
this kick on its own, it works as a build kick, but it doesn't work as that like initial impact. It didn't have
Right.
enough like meat to it. It
Right.
kind of
Right.
sounded a little too soft. So that's why I used it there.
Yeah.
Then we like look at some of the other elements, like this symbol that we have for a transitional piece into this kick that I have that I made into an impact. I don't like using impact samples. I prefer making them myself in terms of like taking a kick, cutting out all the highs and then giving reverb to make this.
Mm. Oh.
Because
Oh.
you have more control over it, you're able to take out certain harmonics and you're able to like kind of make it intentional to the track rather than being like, oh, I have this giant tail of an impact that I can do nothing to. Like I can take out some of the frequencies of it, but there's still some low end that if I take out, I lose the initial impact of the kick. I don't want to automate that, so I'm just like, I'll just do it myself.
Mm.
Then obviously just some white noise for like simple, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
effects. So with that being said, we can go into the pre-drop into drop, which is this right here. This is kind of like my little secret trick I do in a lot of songs, specifically recently. Is Ozone Imager. What I'll do is I'll throw this thing on the master right before Ozone 8. So after I do like my standard cuts of like 20 hertz and then 20k hertz, hopefully that's not taking up the whole thing.
No,
I'll
it's,
literally
it's
just
it's normal now.
good. I'll literally take Ozone Imager, I'll run it at like minus 100 width, so everything's mono, and then I'll just automate the mix. So that way,
Mm.
when I want it to go mono, I can just turn it like up 100%, and then I can just, when I want a stereo, turn it down. It's also great for transitions too, like slowly bringing it up to like towards mono, and then cutting it back to stereo. Just like, oh, it gives this like weird sense of like tightening up, so it builds that tension because you kind of feel like the walls are caving in on you as you're listening to it, and then all of
Mm.
a sudden they're just open. It's
Mm.
really nice and it's a really unique way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you hear this bell, which it's affecting the most. So if we listen to this, it's very stereo, and then it's a mono. I don't know if
Mm.
that comes through on
Oh yeah, I think it does. I
and then
think it
yeah,
does. Yeah, I think.
it comes through. Yeah, it's just a little strange. Discord's audio is kind of
Yeah.
weird. But then what we did to bring it in, I didn't want to do like drum fill. I do drum fills a little bit, but I used to do them all the time, but not
Yeah.
anymore. It just got kind of
Yeah.
boring to me because it's like it's just personal taste. I think they still work to this day. In some drum fills, people who actually like sit there and like look at the individual pitch of the notes and they know what they need to go for the samples. Like, awesome, that's sick. I don't have that time, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just zooming, bro. I'm just doing what works for me. So I just take the tail end of my snare and I just use it as a reverse,
Mm-hmm.
right? To bring it into that first kick. And for the first part of the chorus, actually, it's silent to let the kick ring through. And then also throughout the chords, I'll show you. But I automate all of the reverb and the volume, so that way there's no bleed during the gap here.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it
Mm-hmm.
just sounds like it's really impacting.
Right.
I'll just let it play for a second. Oh God, hold on. It's still for some reason CPU dying. I don't
Yeah.
know why, bro. My PC
So
recently has
weird,
just
man.
been, yeah. But we'll go through the drums real quick. It's just simple. It's nothing insane.
So
Not
like
fucking like
the
rewriting the
reason why
wheel yet.
you have like the the reverb fucking like basically off or whatever or
Hmm.
automated is just so that you can make more room for the kick so it impacts bigger
Oh yeah,
or something like that.
100%. As
Gotcha.
well as the biggest thing to it and like the biggest plus to it too is it creates a sense of like true motion of like the chords stop and then just go and then just stop and go. It like it feels like you're going back and forth with it, right? Like right, and it's like
Right.
it just you hear that like stop go, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
quick. It's not like I'm using it sparingly. I'm not like cutting out like, a quarter of a bar. I'm only
Right.
cutting out literally a 16th, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Actually technically an eighth of a bar, but like, out of
Mm-hmm.
this whole entire thing, out of this section, a 16th of it is just gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's cool because that means for the 15 you're getting the full audio, right? And people don't even really notice it when you listen the first
Right.
time
I
because
didn't.
it's such like a minor thing. But then you look at it and you like listen to it over and over again and you're like, wait a minute, like nothing's there when you're listening, and it's pretty interesting.
Mm.
And then I also do I made sure every audio sample that wasn't the kick was cut here, except for the tail end of the snare. You really don't hear that
Mm-hmm.
because it's masked by the kick. Um,
Right.
but on top of that, like, these crashes which are panned slightly, like one goes slightly left, one goes slightly right, not by much, only like by like 15%. You don't even really like hear them when the drop's going on, but you hear what the drop sounds like without them, and you're like, oh, you need them there. I was like, wow, that was one thing that I learned from that masterclass was that I was like, wow, I was like, it really does make that big of a difference. And then also just down filter to go through, and then I cut those out too. Same thing.
The
And then we
crashes
reverse.
you were
Yeah,
referring
the
to.
crash. Yeah, and then we
Gotcha.
do
Gotcha.
that just with the effects as well, just so that way we get kind of like the best of both worlds and create like that build, that drop, and that rise. And then this is the only drum fill that I really did, which is just using everything that you've already heard, just trying it in a different way, which is
That's
right.
sick.
It's right. It's just simple, clean. And I was like, okay, cool, it works. That's all I needed it to do. And I made sure not to let this snare like ride out too long because I wanted this initial hit again to not have that reverb.
Mm.
And we'll go into the drop stack of like how I actually made it too. But that's pretty much like the structure. And then the only other thing to really build like the tension and feel like it's triumphant and climbing was this first time around. It's the same chord progression from 51 to roughly like 66, right? But then from 67 to 81, I change it up a little bit, but not by changing the chords, by adding notes.
Mm.
I wanted it to climb. So if you notice, when you look at the chords here, look at the top note of this pattern. It just keeps going up, 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 higher, 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 and then slowly comes back down towards the end.
Got it.
And that literally gives it that like climbing effect. And we'll actually look into this real quick. And so we'll look at the drop stack. I'll isolate each one.
And it was
So we have this.
the
What's up?
same chord progression though, just
Oh,
different
yeah.
added notes, basically. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Oh yeah, literally just different like top notes. That's pretty much it.
Got
And
it.
or just added through different like leads. But
Mhm.
we'll break down the saws real quick since everyone wants to know the super
Yeah,
saws.
for sure. I was gonna. How do you?
Yeah. Dude, how do you make those saws, bro?
Yeah.
Saws, dude, saws are the easiest
Yeah, they're
thing in the
easy, bro.
world to do.
Super simple.
People overthink them way too much, dude. Like this is all you need. Like they don't need to be loud, they don't need to be present, they don't need to be the focus. Like the rest of the song will carry it. You just need it to fill that high-end space. So that way you're creating this wall of sound that's like cohesive, right? All I'm doing, OTT, all three bands maxed out with 20% depth. I know that probably took up your whole screen for a second there.
All good. Yeah.
A little bit of reverb, right? Just like 7.4% on the mix with 2-second decay, right?
What
And
is
I'm just cutting.
what is when you put the depth for the Valhalla, yeah, the high cut and depth, like what does that do
Yeah.
when you maxed out like that?
Okay, so what high cut does here is it's essentially just where like what part of the sound the reverb is affecting. So the lower the sound is, the lower the frequencies it's affecting. So if I put it down here, it's going to affect like only this range, essentially from 0 to this range, I believe. If I'm
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a low pass. Yeah, it's literally a low pass filter is what it is.
Gotcha.
They call it a
Gotcha.
yeah. Then depth is just the like essential like how fucking severe this is of like the mix of the decay and like if you bring this down, this won't be as much. It won't be as potent. You won't feel it as much. Kind of depth is kind of like mix, but it applies not to all the prereqs. It applies to just these three: the pre-delay, decay, and high cut, as well as some of your like other modulation over here. The more depth you have, obviously, the more severe you're gonna hear the reverb. Anyways, that's the saws. I'll break down each individual one though, so you guys can see. So you just have a serum here. We'll take up the screen. It's just one super saw, 16 units in, 0.13 detune, no effects.
Simple.
Then
Super simple.
yeah, just simple, same thing. 16 units in, detune at 0.05. This one a mid saw, so it sounds like this. All right, first one sounds like this. Super wide, super mid. And then this last one, I believe, yeah, it's just double this. And then its range is like between like 0.05, 0.09. No effects, real no changes, you
Super
know? Oh,
simple.
actually, this one actually had a phaser on it, surprisingly.
What does
I
that
don't do
do?
this typically.
Just
So
gives a
phaser will
phase.
essentially, yeah, it will make it move left and right. And the last time I did this was like 2 years ago, where I actually set up two serums that are super saws. They're the exact same patch, but the only difference was the phasers are being automated to go opposite ways. So they're the exact same parameters except the frequency. So if we look here, and I think I did it here partially, but I would do it two ways here. So when you listen to this, you hear this like movement. But if you have two of them and they're going the opposite way in perfect synchronization, they're fighting and filling that space at the same time with no phase cancellation. It's truly like an
Damn.
amazing sound. Yeah, I'll send you
Damn.
the DM to it.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty sick.
That's Gigabrain, you
Um
know? Holy
yeah,
shit.
it's
Yeah.
actually kind of fucking pog.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about the basses though, because the basses are what carry the track. What a lot of people don't know.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's like the number one thing that I hear in demos that are like sent to me of like, oh dude, does this sound good? And I hear only super saws. I'm like, where's your basses though?
Hello?
Like people like basses carry it for sure.
Yeah, you need
So
to.
this is what the yeah, this is what the basses sound like.
Oh,
It's an old voice, gritty. I love it.
oh
Right?
yeah.
It's super compressed and distorted. This is where it gets a little complex. Except the sub. Sub is just, dude. You're getting it wrong on the sub, bro. It's not hard, bro. It's
Is
just a
that
mono one unison sub.
yeah? Is that like a sine wave, like just different position or something? From what
Yeah,
it
it's
looks
just
like.
wavetable position is just slid a little bit.
Yeah,
It's a more unique sine wave,
I
but
got you.
yeah.
Got you.
I mean, it doesn't matter what you're using, you know. It's so long as it's a sine wave and you're playing it in the range, you're good, bro. And some people will be like, but you could add texture, you could do X, Y. It's like, no, dude. It's like nobody's gonna hear that. They're just gonna feel it. And like, you gotta think if like, let's say if your aim is to like be this like, you know, big producer that plays on like giant mono systems, dude. Do you think they're gonna hear your left right movement in your bass? No, it's gonna be turned into mono. They're just gonna hear this like constant
Boom,
volume
boom.
pumping sub.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like they're like what? You don't need that. So then you look at the mid. This one is a little bit more unique. This is a preset from CFA, but it's just a sine wave, and then I don't know what the fuck you would call this.
This is more
But
of
you can
like
move
your
this.
congested bass, it sounds like, rather than a
Oh yeah,
spread. Gotcha.
yeah. It's more congested, as well as the routing that I did for it. It's just Camel Crusher with tube warmth on. I tried Vocodex out just to see if I could get a little life. This is the FL Studio meme sound goodizer.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
yeah, I know that
actually
one.
works. And then just a little bit of processing. I cut it at 200 hertz because you don't need, and just because it's a bass doesn't mean you need the bass.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cut it at 200, like you're perfect because you're giving that sub so much space. You can feel the sub, and you gotta like cut out the room for that to breathe, right? And they're just like, okay, cool. Now they're working together, but then we got one more layer over the top of the mid, which I call the top, right? And this one is just like this really gritty, high end, like
That's a really nice one.
cool. It's super nice. And the crazy thing is, same exact processing. The Camel Crusher, Sound Godizer, Fruity Parametric. You don't need to go crazy with this shit. You just need to find what works, and if it sounds good, it is good at the end of the day. Um, People just overthink it because they're trying to like constantly innovate. It's like, dude, it's like just stick with the basics and just try the tools you have in your arsenal. Just stick simple.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't need to try to be like this. Oh, dude, I gotta look at the ratios of like my multi-band
Oh,
compressor. I gotta
that's
understand
great. What?
me, dude. Gotta make sure that I'm looking at like the RMS the whole time. Like, dude, just stop. If it sounds good, it is good. Okay. Like
Yeah.
if it's not overbearingly bad, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah.
You know.
I agree.
And this is what the whole stack sounds like together, and I'll get into the accent notes that I add in a minute. But this is what it just sounds like, just saws and bass. Yeah, it subs
Yeah.
the meat of it, bro. You need it, bro. Yeah. But here's the thing that people kind of, underestimate. So we have the lead, right? So when we play this all together, which by the way, do you guys know this one? Is that a Dre tutorial on how to make a square Elenium fill lead?
Fun fact, that's my lead on YouTube.
I literally, when making this, I was like, damn, dude, I need like some kind of like whiny-esque lead in here. And I shit you not, like an hour before starting the track, I saw that TikTok that you made and
Uh-huh.
liked it. And I remembered the sound. I was like, that would be perfect as the
Damn.
main lead. So I went back to it. I watched that shit twice over, made this from scratch. I was good to go. I was like, all right, bet. The only thing that I did differently was I layered it with a piano, and that's it. And the reason why I do that is just give it that like kind of high end twang at the beginning of it, and make it a little bit more organic. But then you have these leads, which are a little bit more interesting. And that is just really noisy, like weird sound that you would think doesn't sound that good on its own, right? It's just like, okay, why would you do that, right? And the reason why is when you play all of the saws and the subs together, you get.
That's what that
And that also, since they're playing an octave higher than where the lead is, it leaves room for the lead to sit perfectly in the
was.
middle, right? And these aren't anything special. This is literally just like a weird sine wave like lead that's kind of like whiny. This is just a saw that's 16, right? Then this is just double saw 16. Like it's you just make it super stereo, turn down the levels a bit, and mix them together. I think I really only used an OTT. Yeah, OTT, and I cut out 400 hertz below. Just so
Super
it wouldn't
simple.
clash with the mid basses. Yeah, just super simple. Like, why make it complex, when you don't have to? And then all together, you get this. Right? And that sounds really cool. But then we get to the interesting part about this is if you notice when we look at the top of this, these leads are playing and they're super gritty, but you notice how they're climbing. But if you look at the chords right here, they're going down. The chords don't technically change. They actually, I'm pretty sure in the next pattern, this one, yeah, the chords don't change. Yeah, they stay the same. What you're hearing that climbing is that lead, right? We go up here. And that's all it is. Super simple, right? It's just you don't need to overcomplicate it. It's just this weird whiny lead that typically you would think doesn't really fit in the stack. Then boom, all together you have that drop stack that's just super simple and it's easy and it's manageable, right? And there's nothing else really to this track. The next part, I mean, like we can go over the first part of the drop, but I mean, like it's pretty cut and paste here, like where we get up to this build. So the only thing that I did here, right, the only difference was I didn't want the initial hit of the drop to be the same as the last. I didn't want it to just go into it. I wanted to have this like this sense of like, oh, it's coming, you know, like it's building up, right? Like, and then having it open up and then just drop everything but the leads with that snare playing with the kick to really give it that impact. And then all it was, this is so simple. Dude, if we look at this,
Auto filter or something, I would think. I don't know.
not it's literally just a low pass.
Oh,
So if we look
got it.
at my like whole entire setup in the mixer, although messy color wise, I don't really care about the color. I'm not gonna take the time to it's like you manually do that. We go to insert 20. This is my bus, which if you guys know about buses, it's essentially just sending multiple elements into one mixer so that way you can affect it all and either route it how you want to or change whatever you need to. All I did was I created a high cut and a low cut so that way I could take out the lows and then take out the highs, right? All I did here was during this part, we'll watch it. And that's all that's doing. It's just like taking those notes, right? And then just suppressing them as it slowly comes up. And I also do a second thing here, which is it starts off mono. So he brought back that mono trick from the first drop, but we use it differently, right? Rather than using it on the lead and the bell of that little like do 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 do, right? Rather than that, we use it across the whole thing. So that way when it's opening up and the frequencies are rising, you're actually hearing the tightness of the sound open up as well. It's actually pretty interesting to see visually. If we can pull up another ozone imager, and then I will just play this part right here. It should just show you what it looks like. Why does it not?
Weird.
Hold on. Oh, I got it. There we go. And that's all it is. Like, it's just small, simple tricks that I think people kind of overlook and or think are too cheesy, right? One thing that I actually wanted to do that I've done a handful of times is actually pan, like so panning a sound from left ear to right ear. I kind of wanted to do that with the drop stack, funnily enough. I was like, you know, it would be kind of funny if like at one point like one of the fills isn't a fill, it's just the drop just being thrown left ear, right ear, left ear, right ear really quick, you know, so it sounds kind of percussive in a way, and you add some percussive elements in between there. I didn't end up doing it because I felt it didn't, you know, have a place in the track. But I mean, overall, I mean, you know, it's pretty simple. I mean, it sounds, I think it sounds really good, and I think overall, I think it's like, you know, probably one of the ones that I regard as like my best, right? As well as for the time I put into it. I only put like 5.5, maybe 6 hours.
Bro, this track is definitely up there, dude, for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty decent, I think. And that just comes with time because I mean, like, sure, you look at this and you're like, okay, like let's say if you're like some new producer who's like, how did he make that, or like what presets do I need to use to get that? It's like, dude, I was that same kid, you know, like 3-4 years ago. I was looking up how to sound like Elenium, how to sound like XYZ artist,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
just trying to replicate that exact sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly I realized it's not the attempt of trying to replicate the sound, it's just understanding what works
Yeah.
and what doesn't with just the simplistic
Mm-hmm.
elements that you're given, you
Yeah.
know? And that
Absolutely,
just
dude.
comes with time and experience. Just like make songs. That's like the number one thing I can like tell someone is just like make a shit ton of songs.
Yeah, dude.
Because like you're not gonna improve without practice. You know, you're not gonna just sit there one day and randomly make a banger. You know,
Yep. Yeah,
it's,
you gotta fucking
yeah,
grind it out to get that
yeah,
banger.
yeah. Like I've been making music for like what I would say. God, has it been 13 years? Damn. Yeah, it was like 10 when I first started.
Damn.
I didn't take it seriously up until like 8ish years ago of like actively trying to learn. But when I first started out, you know, I was still learning like the basics of the thing, which made it easier for me to learn the more
Mm-hmm.
complex stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say, you know, you can't do it if you're starting like, you know, in your mid 20s, you know, or like mid 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyone can do this.
Oh
It's just
yeah.
a matter of like committing like an hour or two, maybe a day. You don't need to commit the 10 that
Mm-hmm.
some people say you need to. I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
want to like speed run the shit, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, go for it. Be my guest, bro. You got the time and you got the work ethic, go for it.
Fuck
Hold
it.
W and win in life, bro. But if you only have like an hour or two to spare, I mean, that's an hour or
Yeah.
two progression that you didn't have before, you know?
Just gotta do what whatever you had time available, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of like the most impactful things I think I've ever heard was Millennium at one point in his life was a full-time accountant, I want to say, if I'm
I
not
don't know that.
mistaken.
All
And
right.
or he was like in college to be an accountant and he worked at a firm
Mm-hmm.
while making the music that was getting on Mr. Suicide Sheep and popping off,
Oh
you know?
shit.
Like he found the time, dude. Like
Yeah.
that's not a light schedule, you know? That's like you know you gotta you know graduate from college as well as you're working at a place that could potentially be your career,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time he had a few hours a day that you know he would sit there and he would like grind.
Yep.
And it's like, and look at him now, he's like you know one of the most popular artists in America, period, and in the world too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
props to him. Anyone can do it. It's just a matter of do you have the dedication, not to committing the time but dedication to actually trying to improve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think Blanca, he was a barista working full time before he, started going full time on his music and shit. And I think he was a barista or a barista, whatever you have to call it, for like 10
Yeah,
years before he, was
yeah,
able to
man.
switch over. So,
It's pretty impressive. And like the crazy thing is like nowadays, dude, that's kind of getting into like a more of like a theory rant with like marketing. It's like there's no one right way of getting to that point of being full time. There's 100 and
absolutely,
like
bro.
200 to 1,000. You could be someone who ghost produce for someone else. You could be someone who creates like an anonymous alias in a genre you don't typically make and you just pop off, right? Or you can just find your niche on TikTok and like have a cult fan base of like 10,000 to 100,000 people that you grow over like a
Mm-hmm.
year or two, and then
Mm-hmm.
that gets you to full time, right?
Yep.
Like there's the theory of like the 1,000 fan rule, right? Like you really only need 1,000 fans to like buy all of your stuff and
Yeah.
you're set for life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting looking at it from like a business and more marketing perspective, as well as like people just think, oh, I need to get to XY label to be successful. It's like
Nah, bro.
no,
Nah, bro.
no,
Dude,
bro.
nah. There's so many
'Cause,
possibilities with social
yeah,
media, like
man.
all this shit.
Let me tell you, from someone who has experience of getting to one of those XY labels, it's not cookie cutter immediate success for everyone, you know. Like
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough for my song to like kind of hit, you know. Didn't really, not at the level of some of them, but it hit like more than like 80% of the other uploads there. That's not me like taking shots at them. That's just the luck of the draw, you know? It's like the song has to be released at the right time. The people need to want to hear something like that. And whether or not they want to continue to listen to it over and over again is like, dude, no one can predict that, you know? Do you really think that people like a cartoon that made On and On, you know? Like that song has like 170 million plays and they did a version of it in Spanish and that one is nearing the original play count.
Damn.
Like, it's so interesting to see that. So there's no one way to like be successful. You don't need to be on a big label. You can just put out your music, have faith in it, and just grind. And you know what? Your audience will find you in time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100% fuck with that, bro. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. But all right, that's pretty much all of the track. I mean, it's pretty simple when you actually like look at it. You know.
For sure, dude. For sure.
Yeah.
Any, I guess, last closing things for the video or the YouTube viewers or subscribers?
All right, listen. Let's be honest here, guys. If you watched this far, why aren't you subscribed to Dre? Huh? Come on. It's right there. The red button is right there. It says subscribe, okay? And there's a light. Do you see the thumbs up button there too next to it? You may as well click that. You're already clicking the red button. You may as well click the other one, you know? Like, why are you doing this? Or this is on TikTok. Do you see the heart over there? Click it. The plus sign, click that too. What are you doing? Come on now.
Come on, guys, step it up.
Come on. You got to be aggressive. You got to be assertive. But
I
yeah, man.
appreciate it, bro. Thank you, dude.
Hell yeah, brother. No
Let me,
problem.